Please help a starving artist out by supporting me on Coffee. Thank you.
Far, far out into the forest of the neighborhood of Homely, nestled between a huge lake and beautiful mountains, stood a huge manor. From the outside it appeared abandoned, its windows dirty, front and backyard overgrown. The people of Homely didn't even know this ominous place existed. Well, maybe a few did, but it didn't matter to them. At least not until the day Freddie Fazbear stared perplexed at a bunch of letters he had found at the deepest part of his mailbag. Freddie always had problems with his memory, but he never ever forgot a single letter. Determined, he checked the map of Homely for the address. Stranger still, the road on the letter's address was there, sure, but it just led into the forest. Of course, he could just put the letters away. This clearly was a mistake, but then he remembered the myth of the strange manor. Of course, there was no way, but he had to do it, or at least try. It was his job after all. Taking a deep breath and slapping his chest multiple times for courage, the mailman went on his way. Further and further, the man stepped into the dark forest, and despite it being the middle of summer, here an eerie coolness wafted around, creeping under his skin. A thin mist had risen just above the ground. It was eerie, yet Freddie Fazbear didn't seem to notice, as he hummed a happy tune. To him, this just felt like a pleasant summer walk, despite the lack of animal noises and the strange aura. The path clearly wasn't walked often. More driven, if anything, judging by the deep tire tracks. Freddie felt weirded out, if anything. As through the thicket, he saw an amazingly huge mansion approach. The building was clearly old, vines encasing it like the tentacles of a giant squid around a ship. And even that was a more romantic way of putting it than the truth of the matter. Where the hell did this place come from? He wondered. The dirt path was now replaced with mossy, withered gravel. Freddie's heartbeat increased. Despite the hot summer day, a cold shower now washed over him. And for a moment he felt as if he saw someone move in the upper floors. He definitely didn't want to be here anymore. Lucky for him, his trained mailman eyes quickly fixated on a simple mailbox. He sighed a sigh of relief and opened it. A bead of sweat ran down the back of his head as he inserted the letters with shaking hands. Closing the box and lifting the tiny red flag on the side, he turned around. Only to immediately be face to face with what at first glance just had to be a ghost. He screamed and jumped backwards, only to land with his butt on the roof of the metal mailbox. He winced as a heavy wave of pain washed over him, originating from his groin. The ghost girl meanwhile tilted her head. "You seriously were unsure of the sudden intrusion of this man? As far as you could remember, there was no one out here. Just you and the solitude of the forest." You blinked, instantly interested in this specimen. You step forward, while he stretched out his hand, both in a defensive manner and as a greeting. He still thought he was staring at a ghost, but then your tiny thin hand made contact with his sweat-soaked chest. "You're real," you said, confused. The forest played tricks on even the strongest of minds. There were many tales you could tell of uninvited guests making a ruckus in your house, yet whenever you checked, there was no one there. Always going knock, 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 knock. Truthfully, you were simply playing an elaborate game of hide-and-seek with yourself. Freddy blushed at your touch. Your hand was warm, not ghostly cold. Fingers gentle too. Flustered, Freddy adjusted his hat as you took a step back. He slowly jumped off the mailbox before introducing himself. Name's Freddie Fazbear. Mailman by trade." "Freddie Fazbear?" you repeated. "Yep. And, who are you?" You blinked. Yes, your name. You had one. Almost forgotten it, too. You were just simply too sucked up by your work. "Clarissa von Pappenheimer," you said truthfully. "I'm a worldologist. I study the flora and fauna of the forest. I stood my father, and my father's father before me. Something woke me up. Thought I heard a window break somewhere. Or maybe a door open. This house is huge, though, with tens of rooms. Haven't looked at in a long, long time. I have just been feeling so exhausted." Freddy immediately realized that the person before him was the definition of a hermit, and he felt sorry for you. He wondered how you got into the situation. "Well, I got your letters." He stepped aside as you opened the box. The letters were all addressed to your grandfather. However, since you were the only person alive in your home, this meant these were sort of meant for you now, correct? "Well, I gotta get go." He stopped mid-sentence, realizing you had a tight grip around the belt of his mailbag. For a moment his heartbeat increased. He felt as if this was the end, but only for a split second, because as your eyes met, a strange feeling overcame him that he couldn't quite pinpoint. Was it pity? Or maybe he was scared of you? Or was it love at first sight? "Will you be back?" you asked curiously. "Well, The noises have stopped when I saw you at the window. The guests seem to be afraid of you. They're gone now. They will be back soon." You pointed at your home. "They always make so much noise. I cannot sleep unless all lights in my house are turned on. But then it's too bright, and still I cannot sleep." Freddy felt bad leaving you behind, but at the same time he really didn't want to be in that building's shadow during sunset. Tell you what, Clarissa from Pappenheimer, said Freddy. Next time you have a letter you need delivered, I will come and pay you a visit. You blinked. To deliver it? To deliver it, yes. And you fell silent. Uncomfortably, Freddy shifted. You still had an inhumanly tight grip around his belt. Very well, my mailman. He let go, and Freddy took a step forward, sighing in relief. Though as he turned around to bid you farewell, all he saw was your white nightgown vanish in the darkness of your manor, the door falling shut seconds later. Meanwhile, behind the door, you stared at your hand, the one that had experienced human touch for the first time in a long, long while. You didn't even dare blink for a while, as the experience had been so surreal. You felt as if the only humans you had ever seen were on the black and white TV in your study. And the first human voice you ever heard was from the record player in the manor's dining room. Ignoring the creaking and knocking of the guests, who had returned sooner rather than later, you made your way into your office. You knew a few things from the TV. You had read books, magazines, and heard wonderful things on the old radio in the painting room. It had been 2 weeks since Freddy delivered his last letter to you. Admittedly, thoughts of you were creeping in his mind occasionally, and even worse at night. He dreaded sleeping now, afraid of dreaming of you, as he couldn't quite pinpoint if the dreams were pleasant or horrifying, as he wasn't able to remember them. But one thing was clear. He always awoke with a tight feeling around his groin and a cold sweat. So it seemed even his own body didn't know how to react to the tiny ghost girl in the forest. And so, when he entered the post office on this day and found out that in fact there was a subscription newspaper with your address on it, he knew this really hadn't been a one-off thing. Freddy was not sure if to be thankful or horrified. The mailman made sure to deliver your newspaper around the time the sun shined the brightest, in the vain hope this would maybe alleviate the fear he felt. Sure, maybe that would have worked if he had slept properly, yet despite his racing heartbeat he still managed to deliver the newspaper. Thankfully, this time you didn't just appear behind him. In fact, he didn't see you at all. He exhaled, thanking whatever deity spared him of another awkward encounter. However, as he was halfway to Homely, from the furthest corner of his right eye, he noticed something white. Freddy's head turned slowly, only to see you staring blankly. He waved at you, and you blinked. That wasn't really much of a reaction, was it? You had fallen asleep in the thicket last night while chasing what you thought was one of your guests, but it turned out to be nothing but smoke and mirrors. Your hair was covered in sticks and leaves. This was normal for you, of course, but you understood that maybe this seemed strange to someone who didn't have the constant attention of uninvited guests that were knocking and knocking and knocking all the time, all the damn time, destroying your things, entering your home. Freddy smiled at you, and the faint hint of a blush decorated your face. That night, for the first time in what felt like decades. Your house late, silent. And the next time Freddy Fazbear needed to head out to your manor, there had been a whole stack of magazines and papers waiting for him. Honestly, half of them made him blush just reading the titles. The forest path had now become decently familiar now, and even your home was less foreboding that he had seen it a few times. Though that was a very slightly less. Today you had been waiting for him, sitting on your mailbox, kicking your feet aimlessly into the air as you were staring and humming. Freddy greeted you, and for a moment you didn't respond. Did he upset you? Got a whole bunch of mail for you today, he said in a pleasant tone, and you looked at him, not answering. He opened his bag and inserted a black cover magazine. Big Boys Monthly, he said. Guys, muttered Freddy. Love and War Weekly and... Ooh, Kiss Me, My Love, the magazine for lonely women. Roxy subscribed to that one too. You blinked, not knowing who or what a Roxy was. And, he scratched the back of his head. He fidgeted before putting the final magazine into your box. Say it. You taunted. He took a deep breath. Hot Mailman Monthly. You smiled, and it made Freddy gulp. He hasn't seen you smile yet. It was like the terrifying visage of someone who had forgotten how to do so. Are you trying to tell me something, Miss Pappenheimer? You blinked. Maybe. Without a hint of hesitation, or even a slight change in facial expression, your hand shot forward, tightening around Freddy's tie, and with the strength of 100 men, he was pulled into you, your lips crashing onto each other. He gasped while you hushed a pleasured moan. Your mouth was wet, your tongue curious and scarily long, as it snaked around Freddy's, eyes rolling back. You were quite a good kisser for a hermit. After 10 seconds, you finally let him pull away, a thick strand of salvia connecting your mouths. Freddy was a blushing mess, while you just stared at him, unblinking. Do you want to come inside with me? He asked straightforward. Freddy looked at his mailbag. You know what? He took a deep breath. Sometimes even the mail is late. Sure, I think I would love to. Jumping off your mailbox, you took his large hand in yours, dragging the man into your manor.
Hey, thank you for watching my video until the end. If you're new here, I hope you stick around and watch a few more. But before I say goodbye, I'd like to remind you to like the video and subscribe. That really helps the YouTube algorithm. That's all. Hope you have a good day. Until next time. Bye!